So ambition to me is coupled with curiosity, that life is much more than your work. And it's not work-life balance. It's work-leisure balance. Life is the whole pie. So the work I do is incredibly important for humanity. So it's remarkably important that we're connected to nature in some way, shape, or form.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I think we forget that we're organic beings too. Right? I mean, we really are.
Yep.
And I have a question for you, Monique. I want to kind of go a little bit behind the scenes with you, if that's
Sure.
right.
Yeah, go for it.
Hey guys, welcome to episode number 207 of the Game On Girlfriend podcast. Today, I got to sit down with Monique Allen. She is a very distinct coach, and I always love when I can have a coach on the show because you guys kind of get to hear what we coaches talk about when we're together, but also the power of coaching. Obviously, I'm a believer in it, but in this conversation, we got to talk about how she's coached herself through stuff, the coaches she has hired, why we believe in coaching, and how one or two questions can turn your entire life around. I hope you really pay attention to how Monique talks about ambition, what it actually is, and then she ended up asking me a question about abundance and our fear that we're never going to get everything done, or having too many options can make us feel paralyzed. It's like the coolest conversation I've had in a really long time, and I hope you really enjoy it. With a background as the founder and creative director of the Garden Continuum, Monique Allen has utilized her knowledge as a lifelong gardener, business developer, and educator to bridge the gap between landscaping and business building. With that experience, she launched her coaching career as the Life-Scape coach. Monique created the Life-Scape Method, a strategy developed to guide people towards improving their land, lives, and professional satisfaction. I hope you really listen for how she talks about the importance of hanging out in clean, good dirt. So fun. Monique believes that a lifescape represents the intersection between good design, solid construction, and devoted stewardship as a way to bring the gifts of nature to our daily lives. Her first book, Stop Landscaping, Start Lifescaping, further explores these concepts. And her coaching specializes in branding, team building, curating a positive company culture, and succeeding as a woman in the male-dominated landscaping industry. So I'm sure you can tell why I'm so excited to bring you Monique today. I hope you really just kind of dig in and listen to this conversation. She has so many great insights into how we as humans can really enjoy our businesses and thrive in our businesses and give ourselves permission to be as ambitious as we want to be. Pop in those earphones and let's get to it. Monique, welcome to the Game On Girlfriend podcast. I'm really happy you're here today.
I am happy to be here. We've worked hard to get here together.
I know, right? Life. This is what happens when you get ambitious women with busy lives. So fun.
Yep.
So, Monique, you use a word I love. And that word is ambition. It's one of my favorites. And I love that you are talking about it openly, that you share with so many of us about it. But before we jump in too much, I just want to ask you if you could share with our girlfriends, why is this what you do? Out of all the things on the planet that you could have chosen to do, why is this what you do?
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great question. I need to replace this with these things, right? Because I don't just do this, unfortunately. I just don't.
I love that.
So for gardening, I started gardening because it actually regulated my nervous system and made me feel alive. I had no idea that that's what was happening way back then. But to this day, I still run and operate a 7-figure landscape company because I know that nature has an amazing ability to help people feel grounded, no pun intended, and regulated and connected. And so the work I do is incredibly important for humanity. The reason why I started coaching was because I understood that people with these kinds of missions that were wrapped in altruism and wrapped in for the best interest of humanity and ecology and all of that, oftentimes have beautiful hearts and struggle with being ambitious and being seen as, the proverbial salesperson or entrepreneur or money grubby, or they struggle with that. So I was able to create that connection point. And I think more heart-centered businesses need really, really good coaching support. And so why not do it, right? Like, why not?
Absolutely. I think it's not talked about enough, honestly, is that connection that people feel lost, right? Between I created this heart-centered business and now I have to be a used car salesman. Like, what do I do with this?
Right.
And I think it's a myth. No, of course you don't have to become that. You can sell in 1,000,000,000 different ways. You don't have to do it one way. But I think that this conversation is critical because it can keep, my mission is to put more money in the hands of more women, right? And it can keep money out of the hands of women who start businesses because they run away from sales or they run away from the idea that they can nurture themselves and make money at the same time. And I love that you called it getting grounded. So I have to ask something, Monique, because
Okay.
I have just entered the world of highly sensitives. I did not know about this world. I didn't even know this was a term. And I apparently score off the charts as a highly sensitive human. I was like, what? I'm super tough and strong. You can't call me highly sensitive, right? But I totally am. And so gardening is something I've always been attracted to as well. And I didn't realize it's something that can help regulate the nervous system.
Yes. So, there's been a lot of studies now about how healthy soils, when we actually touch healthy soils, that there are components in there that are nervous system regulating, antidepressants. They can really help the mood, the smells, the feel, the actual soil itself. And of course, we're talking about healthy soils here, not going and rubbing your hands in urban dirt. That's not what we're talking about. But
it's not an excuse to get dirty, people.
yeah,
Yes.
but isn't it fun?
Yes.
So yeah, and then also, being outside and being in nature, having bare feet and walking on, on lawn, organically tended, not chemicalized. We've got to be careful with these things that we say because we're looking to be in a healthy spot and then touch our human body to that health. I mean, for people who like the ocean and like going to the beach, there's all the ions coming out of the ocean and what they do. People who like to hike, the term forest bathing, we are understanding more and more and more. And actually, it's not new. I mean, if you go all the way back to Love's book, The Last Child in the Woods, like it is really, really important for us to connect with nature biologically because we have been in this urban and tech environment for a split second compared to our evolution. Our evolution hasn't caught up with where we are. So it's remarkably important that we're connected to nature in some way, shape, or form.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I think we forget that we're organic beings too. Right? I mean, we really are.
Yep.
Yeah. It's so funny. In episode 205, there's a guest on the podcast who talks about eating sunshine, meaning eating the fresh fruits and vegetables that were touched by sunshine. I was like, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard, but you're reminding me of it too. Like walk in places where sunshine has been and get out and remember that's part of us. We're part of these ecosystems. It's so beautiful. Oh, Monique, thank you for that. That was lovely. And I know as you've evolved, right, as you've continued on with your career and decided to start coaching, that one of the things that you can really support people in is remaining ambitious. I'd love to know your definition of ambition, but that we can remain ambitious and still raise healthy, beautiful families. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that means to you? Why this is an important piece for you?
Yeah, that's that's a big box to unpack, right? So I started in this industry when I was a teenager in the landscape industry. And I have some familial trauma and a lot of sort of mother wounding and familial wounding and father wounding, and so I looked at this as a way to, to just keep moving. I had no idea what it was actually doing for me. And I've been in the industry almost 40 years. So that each decade has been an evolution of me, right? So when it's not, perfectly 10 years, but each decade has sort of been an evolution of me. And at some point, I never thought I would be married or have children or anything. And at some point that became important, but I didn't want to give up. I didn't want to step out. I didn't want to be any less ambitious. I approached motherhood with ambition. And when I use the term ambition, I mean that I am not looking for a recipe or a blueprint for how one does it. So to mention a book like What to Expect When You're Expecting. Okay, great information, kind of baseline convention. I'm someone who's going to look at convention and say, okay, this is the most easily accepted map for what I'm doing. But is there more? Right? We can say that about business. We can say that about landscaping. If I wasn't ambitious, I would still be using urea-based fertilizers that are throwing salts in the soil.
Right.
But I was ambitious and asked, is this the healthiest way? So ambition to me is coupled with curiosity. So yes, I want to grow. Yes, I want financial security. Yes, I would like to have some success. But I also am hungry for expansion and knowledge, and that requires feeding curiosity. So I did it with motherhood, where I didn't want to follow the conventions of the medical system. I didn't want to follow the conventions of the school system. I wanted to ask, is there more? Is there more? And that's not to be greedy, or, there's this, we talked earlier about ambition maybe seeming as a dirty word.
Yeah.
It's not about greed. It's not about want. It's about wanting richness. It's about wanting to understand, how do I bring out the most sensational flavor that I can out of my experience? And then how, when I get that sense of satisfaction, do I turn it in service to those that I serve?
Yeah.
And when we're richly supported, we are able to be incredibly generous. And to me, that is the benefit of seeking ambition through curiosity.
Holy cannoli. Okay, my mind's blown a little bit, but I am sitting here realizing I think I use ambition and abundance interchangeably. You just had me realize that. I think when I talk about abundance, it's one of my favorite topics. It's about there's not just one way, right? So many times we get myopic and we're like, well, this is what to expect when we're expecting. Like, and you just go in on that one thing because it's what everybody's doing. And you got to open your mind up and go, but is there more? Because of course there are an infinite number of possibilities and ways to go through life and experience things. And it seems like you have used ambition in a very similar way of like, okay, this is fantastic. Is there more? Is there another perspective? Is there something else that can be done? I just think that's absolutely beautiful. I love that you say ambition through curiosity. That's so good.
Yeah, thank you. And I think nature, so for me, nature has been an incredible guide. I've been working alongside nature in partnership for decades. And the one thing that you learn pretty quickly is that, yes, there are patterns, but there are nuances of pattern, and there's also chaos in the machine. And so you have to really be nimble. I was a dancer. So, for me, center line and balance and all of that is really, really important. And our job is to be nimble, to sort of allow ourselves to float through each of these experiences with our awareness peaked. And then think about, when we say, is there more? It's asking yourself if you can access something that's deeper or richer, not saying, I want more stuff. And I think people can sometimes confuse abundance, where I just want to make a lot of money and have a lot of stuff. But I think you're saying it in a way that's much deeper, which is, abundance of satisfaction, abundance of health, abundance of connection, abundance of resilience. Like, we're thinking about all of these quote unquote softer terms that are about being able to have access through awareness, and that abundance and ambition through curiosity.
Oh, I love it. Yes. There's one more soft I'll add to it that I think is so important. And I think it's what you've really touched on here. So it's also an abundance of options.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, we're here to live a life of freedom and joy and experiences and have sunshine. And remember, we're organic and do all these things. And it's very difficult to do that if we think there's only one way to do things. So
yeah,
beautiful.
Let me ask a question, because I'd be really curious, because as a business coach, what you think about this. So when we think about abundance of options, I see in my practice that it is by virtue of the abundance of options that I see people stall out. Because when there's so much to choose from, because we're not actually taught very well how to make choices through abundance. We're actually taught to make choices binary. This is right, this is wrong. This is black, this is white. This is up, this is down. This is a good career, this is a bad career. So when we have all of this abundance, but we've only ever been taught how to make decisions in a binary construct, then abundance becomes a problem. Then abundance becomes a hurdle that people's past trauma or stories or face plants. I don't know about you. I've face planted many.
I like that term. I like that you turn that into a thing.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Yes, I like that.
Then how do we choose when we have so many options?
Such a great question. And it's actually the scarcity, right, is built into the binary decision.
Right.
So we think there's only one right way to do it, and we're trying to find it. So we're constantly grabbing, and that causes spin out. As opposed to, I see you options. I'm going to do this one right now, and I'm going to get that done to completion, right? Because completion is also a piece of abundance. So people, like, it's not about getting as much as you can, as fast as you can. I love what you said earlier too. It's about the depth. It's about going all the way down and getting to the richness of that one experience. Now, if there's 4 or 5 things you want to do, that's freaking fantastic. I always say to people, I'm like, Google Docs were created for a reason. They're annoying most of the time. This is a good reason. Throw all those ideas on a Google Doc so you know they're safe and they're captured. Also abundance, right? Because part of the scarcity and the acting all the time around everything is out of this fear we're going to get it wrong. And that's a myth. That's an illusion. You can't get it wrong because everything you're attempting is adding to who you are, and it's adding to your experience.
Love it.
And so when we face that fear of like too much, that's just the flip side of not enough, not enough, not enough. And they're both incorrect. It's not real. It's an illusion. What we do have is what's in front of us right now. And what we have is what we can look at that feels the most congruent in that moment, that we've explored that, and anything else we'll add on later once we get this down.
Sure.
And I kind of learned that actually from one of my very first coaches. She was a concert pianist, and she would sit down and perform a 2-hour piece, right? And it's like, in what brain can you sit down for 2 hours and play the piano? Like, what? Right. And I asked her, I was like, how do you do that? And she said, it's a measure at a time. And she says, I'll work on that measure, right? Which is 4 counts. I will work on that until it becomes part of me. And then I'll add the next measure, and then that becomes part of me. Now you've got an abundance of music by taking one step at a time. And I think dance is much like that. I was a dancer too, right? It's an 8 count. You learn that 8 count and then you move on. And it's not until that 8 count is done that you move on to the next one. And then it's connecting that 8 to that 1, right? So that the dance is fluid and you keep going, but that you don't learn the whole thing all at once. You can't, that's not possible. Nor should we try, because that's silly. And that's going to be done out of a fear of scarcity, out of a fear of not getting it done in time or not doing it right, which is a fallacy. That's impossible. Did I answer your question?
You did. And I love how you did it. I love how you connected it to rightness, this, both desire to be right, belief that right is actually a thing, and then fear of not being right. So like that whole constellation, I think that's, it's brilliant. And then the other thing is that the one measure at a time, I mean, that's so beautiful. I've never heard that before. And I was a dancer, but I don't think I ever heard like those words. But of course, that's how we learned. And what it means is that when we think about entrepreneurship and people feeling about like get rich quick kind of thing, it's like, it doesn't work that way. We actually build our skill as an entrepreneur one measure at a time, like one sale at a time, one service contract at a time. Like, we get better and better. And if we look at it that way, then you have patience with yourself.
Yeah.
If not, then you're always like, why aren't I like that person on the internet that made $1 bajillion in 28.5 days? Like
entrepreneur porn. Yeah. It's none of that.
You to say that. I love this.
Oh my gosh. It's so made up, right? It's just like porn's not real either, people. I hate to break it to everyone. Not real. Yeah. It's like that idea that I always joke around, like people are like, I never saw the sweat, blood, and tear post on Instagram. I'm like, yeah, that part's not so sexy, but that's actually the real part, right? I just wish we would talk about it more. So I'm so glad you asked that question and we're bringing this up because I think real business success comes when we do the tiny tweaks at the last little bits, right? We rework the contract, we rework the about page or the sales page until it lands the way that it can. But I can always say, there's no like, I'm good at business, Gene. That's not a thing. Like it's all learned. And I always joke around, if Elon Musk can do what he's doing, any one of us can figure this out. Like, come on. Like we can do this. Like this is a learnable thing. It's just, you can't go from A to Z and think that's going to work any more than you can, go from Velcro shoes to tying your shoes when you're little in a day. It takes time and you learn one step at a time until pretty soon. We do it now 45 times a week. We tie our shoes and we don't even notice. But there was a time when it was really hard and it took a lot of patience and it took a lot of practice. And now we can do it 45 times a
Sure.
week without
Yeah.
thinking, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same in
Yeah.
business. Yeah. So good. So good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm
Love it.
loving this conversation. So Monique, I know you have your first book was out, right? Can you tell us a little bit about your first book, what it was about? And then I'm going to want to hear your journey about it too.
Yeah. So the book is called Stop Landscaping, Start Lifescaping. A little tongue in cheek, because obviously when I wrote it, I was absolutely landscaping. I'm still landscaping today. But the idea was that I was poking at a paradigm shift that I wanted to make. And it was a paradigm shift that I had been, inadvertently working on for 20 plus years already, maybe almost 30 at that point. And the idea was that the landscape industry has become incredibly commoditized. It's really popular, all the big box stores and all the big brands, and, everybody's doing it. And thank you, Martha Stewart, for, making it a household name, so all of that great stuff, when something becomes big and popular, has with it the negativity of becoming commoditized. And, means we're just driving on price, right? We're driving on volume and quantity and speed. Well, hate to break it to everybody, but nature doesn't follow. Nature just plain doesn't follow. It's not going to allow itself to be commoditized. So we see a lot of problems happening in the industry. So what I did was I wanted to figure out a way to codify what I was doing. And I came up with the term Life-Scape. I mean, it's not my word. It's something that made sense to me. And when I said it,
So good.
so landscape is about shaping the land, and lifescape would be about shaping life. And so a landscape is something you look at, right? It can be completely beautiful and awe-inspiring and scenery and all of that. A lifescape is something you actually live in. So it's transformative, it's grounding, it brings connectivity, it's got vibrational essence, and it's doing a lot of work. It's alive and vibrant. And how do you sell that? Like, how do you sell that, right?
Right. That's quite a package.
That's
Yeah.
a big package.
Yeah.
And if I'm not selling it, who the hell could, right?
Right.
So I had to figure out a way to codify it. It took me 5 years to write the book.
Wow.
And help. And what I did was I drilled it down to 3 tenets. And those 3 tenets are: all landscapes have to be organized, they have to be healthy, and they have to have what I call wow factor.
Okay.
Now, what our current industry does is it sells on wow factor.
Right.
And it
I get
says that wow factor means it's healthy, right? And it means it's organized, but it doesn't work that way. An example: if I am eating like crap and I don't sleep well and I'm not getting hydrated, but I buy makeup and I put it on and I look great. Am I great? Am I healthy? Am I organized biologically? No, right? My brain's not working well because I'm not properly hydrated and fed. So
true.
the correlation is perfectly even, because we're talking biology to biology.
Right.
So what I did was I did a journey in the book to help people understand the concept of this idea of organism and health of.
Okay.
And then I journeyed through. I have an idea, I have a dream, and I need to take that dream and bring it into manifest reality. How do I get from dream to manifest reality? And I walked through all the steps of actually building that lifescape. Yeah, so that was like the basis of the book. And I have more to say, but I'll be quiet for a second. And
I thought that was great. I'm like riveted. I'm like, say more things. No, I think that's so cool. And I love that you've really designed it off of your own journey, like how you really had to go through this and figure this out. I think when we can share stories like that through books or through anything really, but I think I love the medium of the book because you really can feel like you're with the person. And so that you're sharing from the structure that you use to create all of this and then to understand the humanity. I always talk about our shared humanity behind business, behind success. There's a person, right, who can get a call from the school, the doctor, anybody in a day and have the whole day go off course, right? There's that shared humanity piece of that I think you're speaking to. That's so cool about, we have these bodies to take care of. They need things in order for us to function, right? We have that piece of it, but then also all of the other pieces that need to be in place for something to work properly. And I have a question for you, Monique. I want to kind of go a little bit behind the scenes with you, if that's
sure.
right.
Yeah, go for it.
So walk us through a day. Let's say, did you block out time to write the book? Did you sit down sometimes and go, I don't want to do this right now, and then get up and go watch Netflix? Like, tell us how that was. Cause I know there's so many people listening who want to write a book and they're like, and suddenly I'm in front of the pantry. I don't know how I got here. Like there are those moments, right? Talk about shared humanity, right?
Yeah.
So what was that experience of actually for 5 years getting this beautiful work out of your head and into your hands? What was that journey like for you?
Well, so again, it was evolutionary. So a day in the life in year one was different than in year two and was different than year three because I didn't know what I was doing. I started writing in and publishing a newsletter back in, I think, either the late 80s or early 90s. So back when you folded the damn thing and you had to go to the printer and you had to lick a stamp because they didn't have the sticky ones yet.
I don't remember what you're talking about. No, of course.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
I know all about it. Yes.
Yeah, right. So I've been writing for a long time and honing my writing craft. And I thought, well, I write a blog, I can write a book. Not so much. So I did writing classes and I did all of those things so that I could see if I could figure it out. And I got far enough to figure out the brand of the book, the mission of the book, the 3 tenets, but then I really struggled putting it together. So I hired a writing coach and worked with her for a while, and she was lovely. And then she asked me the greatest question. She said, I'm just curious, is it more important that you write the book or that the book gets written?
Ooh,
and I was like,
question.
That's a really good question.
God bless
And
coaches.
really good question. And
Great
what
question.
she pointed out to me was that I was highly articulate speaking and I was impassioned as a speaker, and she recommended that I hire an editor that could get me speaking and then transcribe my speaking and then help me to organize the book. And so ultimately that's how I got it published. I hired a woman who we would pick one of the topics, we would talk about it, we'd record the call. This was before like rev.com or Temi or any of those things. So we literally sent the recording to a woman in Ireland who then transcribed it. And we were always F-bombing. We were so funny. And she would literally transcribe the F-bombs and be so excited because she's Irish. And she's like, you don't understand how much we love that word. Then we had to clean it up because it was speech. But what ended up happening is I was able to capture so much content, and I had to accept, like Anne Lamott's book, Bird by Bird. She talks about shitty first drafts and that the writing is in the editing. I really learned that writing a book isn't penning a book from the start to the end. It's about kind of vomiting out all that information and then like playing cards or puzzle pieces, moving it around and refining it and refining it. And at the very end, I ended up switching, I think, 2 of the chapters because I just hated the way they flowed. So I think when people understand that it's that kind of process, it feels a little less daunting. But I did have to hire help. I mean, I wouldn't, between parenting, running the business, and my parents were both sick, which was why it took a long time. I actually took almost 2 years off in that point because I was taking care of them and then they both died. So it was like a lot of work, but getting on track with the help was phenomenal. It was money very well spent. Have I recouped the money on the actual book sales? Honest to God truth, no. Have I recouped the money in my business because this book supports the foundational mission of my business 10 times over?
Right. I love that. I love that you're being honest about that because I think so many people have this idea that you write a book and you make $1 bazillion. Nope. And instead it's understanding that the book is I always talk about our businesses are like a soup, right? There's a lot of different ingredients that go in to make it amazing. It doesn't just show up, right? Or one thing doesn't come in and save the day, right? That childlike thinking of this will be the thing that'll turn it around. It's like, no, everything's in there together and it all matters. And they really using the book as a vehicle to get your message out and to have people say, oh my God, I really love the way this woman views this. I need to call her and understanding that that's actually the driver. I think that's beautiful. Thank you for being honest about that.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll just add one little thing. If your business is one that needs to have employees, it's really good for them to understand. So we teach the 3 tenets of Life-Scape all the time We teach them to say, I'm a lifescaper, not a landscaper. And then someone's going to go, well, what's that?
What?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, lifescapes are the 10x version of landscape. Wait a minute, tell me about that. Well, they're organized, they're healthy, they have wow factor. That's so cool. Now other people can talk about it. It doesn't have to be me.
Beautiful.
So there's value in that as well. And that ultimately, that ends up being priceless. So anybody who is listening who has employees will know exactly what I mean. It's just
absolutely. It's just such a business asset, right? I mean, it
right.
really is an asset. It's something that's constantly producing value for you over and over and over. It's beautiful. Right. And so you're also writing a second book, yeah?
Yes. I'm writing a second book. Well, what I learned in writing this book was that this really, really helped me to put banks on the river of what I do and why I do it, going back to your very first question, right? So it's really, really clear. And what I realized is, as I said, landscape was shaping the land, lifescape is shaping a life, that life is much more than your work. It's not work-life balance. It's work-leisure balance. Life is the whole pie. And work is a part of the pie, leisure is a part of the pie, health is a part, spirituality, love, sex, all of it is a part of the pie. And we're trying to, balance all of those pieces. So when we're shaping a life, we have to think about all things from, our personal relationships to our professional relationships to our health and everything else. And so the book I'm writing now is called The Embodied Entrepreneur, From Rage to Realization.
Ooh.
And
great subtitle. Oh, I love that. Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I got excited.
What I learned,
that was
what
awesome.
I have learned in studying this is that a lot of trauma survivors, big T and little t trauma, because we all pretty much have trauma embedded in there somewhere, go after entrepreneurship. And for me, my trauma, there was abuse in my life. And so it created rage, right? So I had a really big rage response, a really big fight response, and trying to work with that. And what I've learned in the physical trades, there's a lot of rage in the physical trades. There's a lot of people who are dealing with I gotta move my body. Like I was a dancer, I was a bodybuilder. I now teach yoga and do yoga. I have to move my body. It's a very important way that I regulate my nervous system. So I was trying to understand how we embody entrepreneurship through the cycle of healing, whatever those things are that we need to heal. And are we actually healing them or are we masking them?
Gorgeous. God, what a question. That is the question, isn't it?
It's the question.
It is the question
I had to ask myself, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're bringing it up because I think it's something we should all be asking, right? And I think you're right about entrepreneurship. I've definitely seen that as well. There seems to be a breaking through and a breaking away from that happens in entrepreneurship that really does help heal, but it also takes up a lot of time and energy. It's a great way to avoid feeling as well. And so I think that's a gorgeous question. I cannot wait to get my hands on this thing. You might have to come back and talk to us about it once you get it all done. I'm so excited. And from an insider's question, I think this is coming, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What lessons do you think you learned from book one that you are now taking as the writer, as the creator of the work that you're taking into this second book? What do you think you learned the most from the first one that you're pouring into the second?
I think one of the main things that I learned from the first is that I do need to actually speak. That part of the way I'm able to channel is through speaking. So not only my experience, but I honestly believe that there's a greater experience that comes through us. And so I need to speak. So I definitely talk and record and transcribe. That it just works for me. And now I can do it for myself. I don't have to pay someone to do it because I know how to do it now. So that's really good. I also think that another piece of it is that I will be braver this time. I think I masked myself in the first book a little bit because definitely fear about what would people think. I think I was really worried about my industry and maybe saying things that were wrong for my industry because I was kind of pushing against it. I just turned 57. I could care less if I make people mad now.
There we go.
Why
do we have to be older before that?
I don't know.
Nugget comes in. It is
I don't know.
So liberating, isn't it?
Yes. And
So
so
liberating. Yeah.
I think I'm a little braver. And I think the other piece is that I'm also not as worried about like people like, when is it coming out? And when is it? Da, da, da? And I'm like, "Yeah, when it does." Like, it's not, I understand that the process of writing it, the process of it becoming manifest, right? The dream manifesting. I understand that process a little bit better.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going easier on myself.
Okay.
It's not gonna, I'm not looking, I'm not, oh, it's gonna be a bestseller. It's gonna be this. Nope. It's gonna be another carrot in the
In the
stew of
soup.
my life.
Yeah, sister, preach on it. I
Yes.
love that. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
it is. I mean, I think that's right. It's another aspect of your journey being shared that always helps someone else. I don't care what anybody says, because I always joke around like none of us are that special. There's 7 billion of us on the planet. If you're the only one going through what you're going through, that's pretty dang special. Like most of us go through the same things. And so
Right.
when we can share from that, it's so helpful because once again, I say you can sell anything if you help someone get something faster and with less pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so you sharing that and helping other people get through that and ask those really important questions can save them so much time and so much pain. It's just beautiful. So grateful you're doing that. And so Monique, if someone's listening right now and they're like, holy cannoli, I need me some more Monique, where can people hang out with you? Where can people find you?
So my website is thelifescapecoach.com. So super easy to hop on there. I've got so much free stuff, and I have a blog that, I write and I've written for a while. So there's a great long library in there. And I'm on Instagram. That's like that's my happy place. I float in and out. I know one of your questions in there on your podcast is, how important is social media? And I'm like, meh, depends on the month. Like, I float in, I float out. I love it. I hate it. But I like the Instagram platform. It kind of works for me. So that's always a great place to see what I'm up to as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. You guys, we are going to have that link underneath the video if you're watching on YouTube or in the show notes if you are listening. Monique, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I've just absolutely enjoyed this conversation and I hope it helps a lot of people.
Yeah, I hope it does too. Thanks so much for having me. This was fabulous.